I was standing in the conference room still wearing the lanyard from the award ceremony they'd thrown for me that morning. My name was on the big screen just an hour ago. Outstanding achievement in systems architecture. People clapped, cameras flashed. For a moment, I thought, this is the peak of my career. And then, before the applause even had time to fade from memory, Declan Myers, our brand new CEO, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Effective immediately, we're terminating your employment." The room went silent. I could feel every pair of eyes shifting between him and me, waiting for me to break. But I didn't. I just smiled, the kind of smile that comes when you know something they don't, and said, "You've just erased the only signature keeping Techspire Tower legally operational." He didn't flinch, but a few people in the back exchanged glances. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. It's a strange feeling standing on the mountaintop one minute and being shoved off the edge the next. Your brain races, anger, confusion, disbelief. But underneath it all, there's a calm voice reminding you, you built the foundation they're standing on, and foundations don't move without consequences. Before I tell you exactly what happened next, where are you tuning in from today? And tell me this, have you ever been treated like you were replaceable, only to realize you held more power than anyone imagined? Drop a comment if this sparks a memory. Your story might just be the one someone else needs to hear. People used to joke that my system was like a stubborn animal, loyal only to the one who raised it. They weren't entirely wrong. 8 years ago, Techspire Tower was just another name in the skyline. Our IT infrastructure was a mess, patched together from outdated vendors, duct tape, and crossed fingers. When they hired me, I didn't just fix things. I tore it all down and rebuilt it from the ground up. Line by line, module by module, I wrote a system that didn't just manage data, it understood it. I wove in redundancies no one else had thought of, safeguards that could survive a power outage, a cyber attack, or even an internal takeover. But here's the thing, you can't just hand over something like that. Every command, every permission level, every hidden failsafe had a logic to it, a rhythm. Outsiders might see code, I saw muscle memory. My hands knew the sequences by instinct. My eyes caught anomalies before they even hit the logs. In meetings, Declan used to smile politely when I tried to explain how it worked. I could tell he'd already decided it was just another tool in the company toolbox, something you could swap out if you found a cheaper option. I didn't argue. Why teach someone how to dismantle the very walls keeping them safe? The truth was, the system was more than code. It was the spine of the entire operation. It connected every department, authenticated every transaction, and verified every contract signature. Without it, Techspire wasn't just vulnerable, it was paralyzed. I'd protected it for almost a decade, updating it quietly, making sure it stayed lean but unbreakable. I'd watched people come and go, managers rise and fall, yet the system stayed solid because I was there. And now, with me gone, let's just say some things don't take long to notice. 5 years ago, Techspire was on the edge of a cliff, and most people in the building didn't even know it. One Tuesday afternoon, I was halfway through a coffee when my screen lit up with a wave of alerts, red, blinking urgent. Our main vendor, the one we relied on for compliance, data storage, had gone under. Just like that, no warning, no grace period. Servers shut down, connections dead. For a company like ours, bound by federal contracts, that wasn't just bad news, it was an existential threat. Without those systems running, we couldn't verify contracts, couldn't process payments, couldn't even prove we were compliant with the law. I remember the silence in the executive floor when the news hit. People walked past my desk without making eye contact, whispering into phones. Someone asked, how long can we survive without the vendor? The answer was measured in hours, not days. I didn't wait for permission. I locked myself in the server room, literally locked the door, and started writing, patching, building a bridge between the dead vendor systems and my own architecture, stitching together every workaround I could think of. I worked until my fingers cramped and my eyes blurred. At some point, I noticed the lights outside the server room had gone dark. The rest of the building had left for the night. I stayed. The floor was cold, the air smelled faintly of burnt circuits, and the hum of the machines was the only thing keeping me awake. By the third day, we had a functioning skeleton system. It wasn't pretty, but it passed the compliance tests. The crisis was over for everyone else. For me, it was just the beginning. That was when I realized the system wasn't just a part of my job, it was my responsibility. And the thing about responsibilities, they don't just vanish when someone decides you're replaceable. Looking back, the signs were there. Declan Myers hadn't been CEO for more than 3 months, but he'd already started rearranging the chessboard. People with years of experience were quietly leaving. New faces, young, polished, and more importantly, connected, were showing up in key positions. At first, I told myself it was just the natural shift of leadership. Then one morning, I walked into the break room and overheard 2 department heads talking. They weren't whispering. "Declan's nephew's moving into infrastructure next month," one of them said. "Which role?" "Lauren's." They didn't see me standing there. Or maybe they did and didn't care. It all clicked. The vague cost-cutting memos, the sudden interest in modernizing legacy processes. The way Declan had been attending meetings about my system, not to understand it, but to nod and smile like he already had a replacement in mind. The official reason came 2 weeks later in the middle of a quarterly review. My performance wasn't in question, they'd just given me an award after all. But Declan leaned back in his chair and said, "We're moving in a new direction, and your position no longer fits that vision." I could feel the eyes of the room on me. Some sympathetic, others avoiding any contact, afraid my fate might be contagious. I didn't argue. There was nothing to argue about. They weren't firing me because I wasn't good enough. They were firing me because they thought they could slot in someone else, someone easier to control, someone who owed them favors. So I slid my keycard across the table, stood up, and walked out. What they didn't realize was that I hadn't left empty-handed. I carried with me the knowledge of every keystone holding this tower together. And the thing about keystones, when you pull one out, everything above it starts to shift. That evening, I didn't go out for a drink, didn't call friends, didn't even bother to unpack the small box of things I'd carried out of the office. I went straight to my apartment in River North, locked the door, and let the city's hum fade into the background. I sat at my desk, powered up my personal workstation, and plugged in the encrypted drive I'd been keeping for years. Not stolen company files, I wasn't reckless, but logs, documentation, schematics, the kind of technical blueprints that existed because I built them. My own notes, my own language. No one else could read them the way I could. One by one, I reviewed the system's keystones, the authentication layers, the contract verification module. The custodian protocol buried so deep in the architecture that even the CTO had forgotten it existed. I wasn't planning anything yet, at least that's what I told myself, but it felt good to know exactly where the pressure points were. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire, a project manager I trusted. They don't know about Clause 19.4, do they? I stared at the screen. Clause 19. 4. The line in the federal compliance agreement that required the custodian of record to be physically present to authorize certain system changes. The clause Declan had probably never bothered to read. I typed back a single word, nope. The rest of the night was quiet. I poured myself a bourbon, the ice clinking softly in the glass, and let the steady whir of my home servers fill the apartment. The city lights outside flickered against my window, a reminder that the world kept moving, but some things in motion can still be redirected. By the time the sun rose, I had a clear picture in my head. Not a plan, not yet, just the outline of one. And when Monday came, they'd get the first hint that my departure wasn't the clean break they imagined. Monday morning, I walked back into Techspire Tower for the so-called handover. The lobby smelled faintly of fresh coffee and cold steel, that polished corporate scent that always felt just a little too sterile. I'd dressed plainly, no lanyard, no badge, just the envelope with my final paperwork. They'd gathered in the glass-walled conference room. Declan, the new infrastructure hire, a kid who looked barely out of grad school, and Aaron from IT, pretending this was a smooth professional transition. "Lauren," Declan said with that politician's smile, "thanks for coming in. We just need a quick run-through of your responsibilities before we get you on your way." I nodded, opened my laptop, and started walking them through the surface-level functions, the public parts, the safe parts. I showed them how to access reports, where to find archived logs, which dashboards tracked compliance milestones. Halfway through, Erin frowned. "Vault's flagging a custodian undefined status," she said. Declan waved it off. "Legacy noise. Probably some old field in the database." I kept my face neutral. "Could be," I replied, clicking to the next screen. What they didn't see was the small icon in the corner of my admin panel. One click buried under an innocuous maintenance function. My fingers hovered there for a beat too long before pressing it. A silent confirmation flashed for less than a second. "Admin token revoked." I closed my laptop and stood. "That should cover it," I said. The intern, my so-called replacement, mumbled a thank you, his eyes darting between the two of us like he wasn't sure if he'd just witnessed something important or completely routine. As I walked out through the lobby, I glanced at the digital clock behind the reception desk. 10:42 a.m. The countdown had started, and by the time they noticed it, it would already be too late to stop it. By Tuesday morning, the ripples had started. It began with a short email from the compliance team to Declan system authentication warnings, possible custodian mismatch, please advise. Harmless enough if you didn't know what it meant, but I did. It meant the backbone of Techspire's legal operations was already flagging that something, or rather someone, was missing. Declan forwarded the email to Aaron with a single line, "Looks like legacy noise. Clear it." Legacy noise. That was his answer to everything he didn't understand. The phrase was practically a mantra now, a convenient way to wave away problems without actually fixing them. By midday, billing had sent their own alert. Payment batch pending, verification server not responding. Aaron sent back, reboot queued. No one questioned why the verification server had stopped in the first place. From my apartment, I could almost picture the tension building floor by floor. Department heads scratching their heads, systems spitting out errors that didn't make sense, meetings filling up with jargon meant to calm people down, but actually said nothing at all. But the real issue, no one was willing to challenge Declan. Not yet. He was new, charming, and loud enough to sound confident. When he said it was nothing, people believed him, or at least pretended to. And so the warnings were logged, dismissed, and filed away. No one noticed the timestamps getting closer together. No one asked why the anomalies were spreading into systems that had never failed before. I sipped my coffee watching the skyline through my window. The city outside was moving at its usual pace, but I knew inside Techspire Tower, the clock was ticking faster with every ignored alert. They thought they had time, and by the end of the week, they'd wish they'd acted the moment the first warning appeared. It happened late Tuesday night. The kind of hour when the building was mostly dark and the cleaning crew was the only sign of life. But in the upper floors of Techspire Tower, the lights were still on in the finance wing. The first real blow landed at 10:14 p.m. A 1.4 billion transaction froze mid-process. No error code anyone recognized, just a looping status, verification pending, custodian signature required. Aaron called Declan immediately. I can almost hear his voice now, tight, but still trying to sound casual. "Run the override." "We did," Aaron said, "twice. It rejects it every time." From there, the emails multiplied. Procurement couldn't push through a major supplier payment. The contracts department reported that all federal bid submissions were stuck in awaiting authorization limbo. It was as if the system had drawn a red line through the company's heartbeat and refused to let it restart. Somewhere between the third and fourth failed override, Erin must have realized what she was up against. She brought in Julio, one of the late-night sysadmins. He checked the logs, frowned, and said, "There's only one active custodian slot, and it's empty." "That's impossible," Declan snapped. "We removed her credentials Monday." "Exactly," Julio said quietly. For a long moment, the line was silent. Even through the walls of my apartment, I could almost feel the shift, that first crack in Declan's confidence. At 11:37 p.m., an email landed in my inbox. Subject line, "Urgent, Chicago HQ at risk." No greeting, just a short question. "Lauren, did you leave something behind we need to fix?" I didn't answer. Not yet, because this wasn't the full panic. That part was still on its way. Wednesday morning, 8:58 a.m., the executive floor of Techspire Tower was already boiling over. Declan stormed into the main conference room, trailed by Erin and two members of the legal team. The air was sharp with tension, the kind that makes people straighten in their chairs without even realizing it. I wasn't there physically, not yet, but my phone buzzed with updates from Claire, who had a front row seat. "They've brought in the federal contracts oversight rep," her text read, "and Declan looks like he hasn't slept." At the head of the table, Erin dropped a thick folder onto the polished wood. The sound cut through the room. "Here's your problem," she said flatly. "Every active federal contract in our system requires custodian verification. The role is vacant, the system is locked." Declan's jaw tightened. "Just assign a new one." "We can't," Erin shot back. "Protocol 19.4. It requires the existing custodian to be physically present to authorize the change. She's not here." The legal rep leaned forward, her voice calm but icy. "Mr. Myers, without that signature, your contracts are in breach as of this morning." You could have heard a pin drop. Around the table, glances darted like they were looking for a hidden escape route. Declan exhaled sharply, pulling out his phone. "Get her on the line, now." Claire told me later that the interns and junior staff outside were frozen in place, watching the scene unfold through the glass walls. A few of them looked almost relieved. At exactly 9 a.m., I was sitting in a cafe 2 blocks away, sipping my coffee when my phone lit up with an incoming call from Techspire's mainline. I let it ring, because the real impact of that missed connection was only seconds away. 9 a.m. on the dot. In every department across Techspire Tower, the same thing happened at once. Monitors flickered, dashboards froze, and then a single banner filled every screen in stark red, "Authorization Lock, custodian role vacated." There was no mistaking it. This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't legacy noise. It was a system-wide lockdown, deliberate, complete, and unmovable. In the cafe, I leaned back in my chair, watching the steam rise from my coffee as my phone buzzed nonstop. First, a missed call from Declan, then 3 in a row from Erin. Then a barrage of texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Inside the tower, I imagined the chaos. The federal contracts dashboard, disabled. Payment processing, frozen. Vendor portals, offline. Every automated task that required my signature was now sitting in a queue that would never clear. Declan must have realized the scale within minutes because my inbox lit up with an email from him, short, sharp, almost pleading. "Come in and sign. We'll increase your severance. Name your number." I didn't reply. Instead, I pictured the boardroom, the legal rep pointing to the clock, explaining how every minute of downtime was bleeding money, stock tickers turning red, clients calling for answers no one could give, and above it all, that silent banner on every screen counting down a reality they couldn't ignore. Without the custodian's return, nothing moved forward. By 9/17, Techspire's market value had already dipped by hundreds of millions, and it was only the first quarter hour. I took another slow sip of coffee. because what was about to happen next would make this look like the calm before the storm. By mid-afternoon, Techspire Tower was running on fumes. The lobby had turned into a revolving door of executives, legal consultants, and frantic messengers. No one smiled. No one pretended it was business as usual anymore. At 2:05 p.m., my phone lit up with a call from a number I recognized, but not from Declan. This time, it was the chairman of the board. His voice was low, careful, the way someone speaks when they know they're standing on a cliff edge. "Lauren, we need you in the building, today. What will it take?" I let the silence stretch before answering. "It's not about money. It's about respect, and you've already shown me exactly how much I had here." He didn't argue, just exhaled long and tired. "If you won't return, we'll have to reassign custodian privileges through the federal process, 14 days minimum." "I know," I said. And I meant it. The process began that evening, emergency filings, endless forms, and a stack of verifications that couldn't be rushed. In the meantime, Techspire bled. Their largest client pulled a $300 million contract within 48 hours. The media got wind of a critical security lapse and ran with it. By the end of the week, Declan was no longer CEO. Officially, it was framed as a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. Unofficially, the board had no choice. I didn't celebrate. There was no fist pump, no champagne toast. Just a quiet walk along the Chicago River that Friday night, the city lights reflecting off the water, and the steady rhythm of knowing I had defended the value of my work without ever stepping foot back into that building. I thought that was the end of it. But the thing about endings, sometimes they open doors you didn't even know were there. In the weeks that followed, Techspire slowly crawled out of the hole it had dug for itself. The federal process finally approved a new custodian, but the damage was done. Their biggest clients had moved on. Trust was shattered, and rebuilding would take years. Declan, last I heard, he'd taken some advisory role at a small startup on the West Coast. Erin stayed. I think she was too valuable to lose, but I imagine she walks a little more cautiously around executive promises now. As for me, I didn't go back, not even for a farewell drink with the few friends I still had there. I'd spent almost a decade keeping that system alive, guarding it like a part of myself. And in the end, I proved what I'd always known. The value of what you build isn't just in the hours or the code. It's in the fact that no one else can quite replace you. People sometimes ask if I did it for revenge. The truth, not exactly. I did it to draw a line, to remind them, and maybe remind myself, that loyalty is a two-way street. When one side decides to tear it down, the other has every right to walk away, even if it means letting the roof cave in. The lesson I took from all of this is simple. Never underestimate the quiet leverage you hold. Skills, knowledge, relationships, these are things you carry with you, even when a company badge no longer hangs around your neck. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible or replaceable, remember, your worth isn't defined by the title on your email signature. And now I'm wondering, if you were in my place, would you have walked away the same way I did? Or would you have taken the deal and gone back?